Ursula K. Le Guin was born Ursula Kroeber on October 21, 1929 in Berkeley, California. She wrote from a young age, submitting her first short story to Astounding Science Fiction when she was 11 years old, but that story was rejected, and of course she then went on to become one of the most notable authors of speculative fiction and sadly passed away in 2018 at the age of 88. And I want to talk about her because I am Daisy Ex Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So I've come up with 10 little-known facts about Ursula K. Le Guin, and the very last one I bet you have no idea of because it is really obscure. But let's get started with
Number 10.
Ursula Le Guin went to high school with Philip K. Dick. Isn't that crazy? Two of the most prominent writers of speculative fiction not only went to high school, but were in the same graduating class. Ursula Le Guin and Philip Dick graduated from Berkeley High School in 1947. The really funny thing about this was that Le Guin didn't remember him. Apparently, no one who went to high school with Philip K. Dick really knew him, which, if you're familiar with his work, may not come as a big surprise. They did write to each other later in life, but they never met in person, at least not that they could remember.
Number 9.
Ursula Le Guin was a child of anthropologists. Her mother was Theodora Kroeber, who studied indigenous Californians and worked in archaeological sites in Peru, and went on to write The Inland Whale, which is a retelling of indigenous California legends. Her father was Alfred Kroeber, who was an cultural anthropologist who did significant work in archaeology and anthropologist linguistics. And he's noted for working with the Ishi people, who were indigenous Californians, and he was involved as an expert witness for the plaintiffs in the case of Indians of California versus the United States.
Number 8.
Maybe the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Ursula Le Guin, we just said her father was an expert in anthropologist linguistics. Well, Le Guin invented her own language. In her post-apocalyptic novel, Always Coming Home, Le Guin created the future Kesh language and Iha alphabet. The novel has Indigenous American and Taoist themes. There was a boxed edition of the book that came with an audio cassette titled Music and Poetry of the Kesh, where you can hear some of Le Guin's created language.
Number 7.
Ursula Le Guin was not an overnight success. Like so many authors, she had her fair share of rejections. In fact, she wrote 5 novels before she was even published. Now, to encourage writers to go on, because writers get a whole lot of rejections, she published one of her rejection letters. Ursula K. Le Guin writes extremely well, but I'm sorry to have to say that on the basis of that one highly distinguishing quality alone, I cannot make you an offer for the novel. The book is so endlessly complicated by details of reference and information. The interim legends become so much of a nuisance, despite their relevance, that the very action of the story seems to become hopelessly bogged down and the book eventually unreadable. The whole is so dry and airless, so lacking in pace, that whatever drama and excitement the novel might have had is entirely dissipated by what does seem a great deal of the time to be extraneous material. My thanks nonetheless for having thought of us. The manuscript of The Left Hand of Darkness is returned herewith. Yours sincerely, the editor, 21 of June, 1968.
Number 6.
Ursula K. Le Guin was a feminist. Speaking of Le Guin's novel, The Left Hand of Darkness, which went on to win both the Hugo and the Nebula for Best Novel in 1970, it explores gender constructs and is considered one of the first major works of feminist science fiction. And she is known for putting her money where her mouth is. In 1987, she was asked to blurb a book for up-and-coming authors. Only thing was, all the writers were men. She responded with, "I can't imagine myself blurbing a book in which Brian Aldiss predictably sneers at my work, because then I could preen myself on my magnanimity. But I cannot imagine myself blurbing a book, the first of the series, which not only contains no writing by women, but the tone of which is so self-contentedly, exclusively male, like a club or a locker room. That would not be magnanimity, but foolishness. Gentlemen, I just don't belong here." By the way, if you're wondering what her beef was with Brian Aldiss, he had criticized Left Hand of Darkness for being preachy.
Number 5.
Ursula K. Le Guin did not approve of whitewashing her work. Jeb, the main character in Wizard of Earthsea, was not white. He resembled more Indigenous Americans. I mean, he wasn't Indigenous American because this was a fantasy on another world, but he wasn't white. Le Guin had sold the movie rights, and at the time it appeared the scriptwriter for the project was Philippa Boyens, who co-wrote The Lord of the Rings, and Le Guin felt that she got the work. Unfortunately, because Hollywood is Hollywood, the script ended up being written by someone else, and it was written in what Le Guin described as a generic Mick-magic movie with a meaningless plot. Her response to the movie was an article in Slate, which I'll link down below because it's amazing, but it starts off with, "I don't know what the film is about. It's full of scenes from the story arranged differently in an entirely different plot so that they make no sense. My protagonist is Jed, a boy with red-brown skin. In the film, he's a petulant white kid. Readers who've been wondering why I let them change the story may find some answers here."
Number 4.
Ursula K. Le Guin did not consider herself a science fiction author. What? Now, this comes from an interview she did in the Paris Review when she was asked if she thought of herself as a science fiction writer. She said, "Where I can get prickly and combative is if I am just called a sci-fi writer. I'm not. I'm a novelist and poet. Don't shove me in your damn pigeonhole where I don't fit, because I'm all over. My tentacles are coming out of the pigeonhole in all directions." But honestly, I don't think Le Guin really disavowed science fiction. I think maybe it's more proper to call her fiction speculative, but that wasn't a widely used term at the time. But she also wrote when science fiction and fantasy were not really acknowledged as real literature. Le Guin at another time said she chose this despised marginal genre of speculative fiction for a reason she did not even acknowledge to herself at the time, because it was, quote, excluded from critical, academic, canonical supervision leaving the artist free.
Number 3.
Ursula K. Le Guin was also a critic of capitalism. She wrote several works that explored alternative economic systems like the anarchist society in The Dispossessed. In her own words,
I see sales departments given control over editorial. I see my own publishers in a silly panic of ignorance and greed, charging public libraries for an e-book 6 or 7 times more than they charge customers. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, and very often in our art, the art of words. I have had a long career and a good one, in good company. Now here, at the end of it, I really don't want to watch American literature get sold down the river. We who live by writing and publishing want and should demand our fair share of the proceeds. But the name of our beautiful reward is not profit. Its name is freedom. Thank you.
Number 2.
oh, that snippet that you just heard, if you're wondering what that's from a speech she gave when she was awarded the National Book Foundation Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters in 2014. Yes, we all know she won tons of Hugo and Nebula Awards and many other awards in speculative fiction, but this National Book Foundation Award is one of the most prestigious awards in literature. She's also one of the most decorated authors in literature. The Library of Congress named her a living legend in 2000. She was nominated for a Pulitzer. There's even an Ursula K. Le Guin postage stamp from the Literary Art Series of the U.S. Postage Company.
Number 1.
Okay, I was saving this last little-known fact because I don't think many people outside of those who are really deep into the publishing industry know about, but I think it's pretty neat. Ursula K. Le Guin was one of the founding members of the Book View Cafe. What is a Book View Cafe, you might ask? Well, let me tell you. The Book View Cafe was founded in 2008 and is a publishing cooperative where 90% of the proceeds of a book go to the author. It is a collective of established authors, but each member author contributes to each other's work. So they act as each other's editors, copy editors, ebook formatters, cover artists, website maintainers, and so on. It's really cool and seems to be right up Ursula K. Le Guin's alley. So those are my 10 little-known facts about Ursula K. Le Guin. Did any of these facts surprise you? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be